Okay, so here's my next vision. Take a block of wood and put a Game Boy in it. I want to make a case for the Game Boy made out of wood. And I cut a 2x4 into some pieces that I thought, that's about the size of a Game Boy. And I thought, maybe it's a little thick, maybe I'll take a little off the back. And I thought, it's really not going to be possible to put anything in here if I don't cut it in half lengthwise. And so I started to try and cut this one, and I thought, I have some thinner pieces of wood, so I grabbed, thinner pieces of wood that are about the same width as the 2x4, and they're already cut in half. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw out what I want the Game Boy to look like on the front, hollow these pieces out, and just sort of work on it bit by bit until it's able to house the Game Boy. If there are any obvious pitfalls to doing this, well, then I haven't realized them yet, so I'll see how that goes. Ideally, I'll have maybe even make some buttons out of some dowels, and I'll stain them. This is a pretty light color of wood. I'm going to stain them so it looks nice and dark. But and of course, I'll have to cover it in a lot of layers of, I don't even know what to keep everything from rubbing away as you handle it a lot and play it. But I want some nice wooden buttons, wooden D-pad. I want it to just look like a Game Boy, but be made out of wood. So hopefully I won't have to use a much bigger piece of wood just so that it's strong enough around the thin edges. But I want it to be about this size. So hopefully I'll have it look all right, and I'll see what I end up with. It's coming along okay. I've got the sort of the vision penciled out here. I drilled a hole in the screen there because that's going to come out anyway, and it's helpful to see how deep I am. I'm struggling with carving out all the wood from the inside. I'm not a woodworker, so I don't have a router, I don't have a drill press, I don't have any good drill bits for drilling flat holes or anything like that, so I've just been kind of winging it, carving the wood out any way I can. I've got a Dremel, so I used this, I don't know what to call this, but it's basically just sandpaper wrapped around a drum. I was using that for a while and it was okay, but the rubber of the drum would sort of rub the inside of the wood, and it would, smoke up and stain the wood black because I'm, rubbing the rubber on it. So it was working okay, but not the best. I finally came across this Dremel Bit, which is just, nice and sharp on all edges, including the tip of it there. And it came 2 in a pack. I've been using that, and it's been working okay. Just so much dust, but I'm getting there. I tried chiseling. Where's my chisel? I tried chiseling some of it out. Can't find it. And that's some of these rough marks. I've just been trying to chisel it up, but I'm of course terrified of breaking the whole thing in half. I know that when I'm almost done, I'm going to get to where I just need to take away just a little bit more, and the whole thing's going to crack in half. These edges are really thin, and I'm worried that I'm just going to bust it all open. I had a close call up here, but I think I've managed to glue everything back in place. So the Game Boy PCB, the front PCB goes in here. I don't want this to be too much bigger than a regular Game Boy, but I'm not going to be able to get the wood case to be as thin as the plastic one. So the good news is some of these edges on the Game Boy PCB can be filed down, especially these corners can be rounded, because it's just, there's nothing actually vital right there. It's just, I can sand that down. So it'll, for me, just be kind of a game of chicken of how much of this I can sand away and how much of this I can sand away until this fits nice and snug inside the wooden case. I haven't started on the back yet, just working on the front one. So I'm going to cut that screen out. I'm going to cut holes for the buttons, figure out a way to cut those accurately, and just finish carving the rest of that out using my Dremel bits. And yeah, it's coming along. It's starting to look like a Game Boy now. I got the holes drilled, and that was just a matter of holding up the OEM shell in front of it and using a drill to drill some guide holes, some pilot holes in there. And then the old process of making them bigger and bigger until they're just the right size. I got the PCB, and this has a backlight installed in it, and there's a bivert chip on the rear PCB, and I'm not going to go into how to do that in this video because it seems like there's a whole bunch of videos already on YouTube for how to do that. So I did that, and I hot glued all these buttons to the PCB so that I could hold it up and know where those buttons are supposed to go. I drilled the side down so that it fit, and I had to also sort of cut out this notch on the side for the contrast dial because that sticks out the side. So for it to go in at all, it has to go into that notch. I cut this screen hole way bigger than it needed to be because I thought it doesn't matter how big it is because only the screen is going to show through because I'm going to use a lens in front, and this is a plastic one, but I have a glass one that I'm going to use. It would have been nice, it would have looked really nice to just stain that and not actually cut anything out and not use the plastic or glass lens, but I figured, that there's no protection for the screen without it, and that'll let a bunch of gunk in if there's not some protective lens on it, so I'm going to use a glass lens. So I sort of cut this indentation for the lens to sit in there nice and pretty, and then the screen can show through. I cut a hole for the red power LED to go through, and so I think that's going to look just fine. I'm just going to use plastic buttons for now. Maybe once it's all done, if it turns out well, then I'll think about using wooden buttons, but I'm just going to do plastic for now. I think that looks all right, and it looks like a Game Boy. Now, the speaker holes, that was even trickier, and I used that same piece of paper, if you noticed, and I used the real Game Boy and sort of did this pencil etching of where all the speaker holes go, and you can tell where the case sort of drops off. There's an indentation on the case, sort of an angle on there. And then I held this piece of paper up, taped that to the wooden one, and used my hobby knife to sort of just poke holes around all the slots, and so that the wood had all those holes poked into it, so I could cut those slots knowing where they are. I took some video of some of the in-between processes, but the sound got all messed up, so I'm not going to upload it. The next step, so this case is quite a bit thicker than the plastic OEM one, so I'm going to trim that down, but something that I need to be aware of is, here's this notch for the contrast dial. Well, there's sort of corresponding tabs, if you can see those, for the link port and the volume dial. So the rear case has the link port and volume dial holes in there, and it has a little tab for the contrast dial. So the case either has a notch cut into it, or it's got a tab sticking up to sort of fill in the space. And you can tell on a complete Game Boy that the notches and the tabs sort of fill in the gaps on either side of the dial. So I'll have to be mindful of that as I cut around and trim those down to leave those two notches in place so that it will fit into the rear half of the case. Now the rear half is going to be sort of tricky because it's got this cartridge slot, so I'll have to bring that down in and then poke it through right there and hollow all the rest out. I probably will use a metal shield. There's a notch for the power switch. The rear shell has these grooves on the back and a battery door. I will probably try to carve the grooves in there, but I'm not going to try to do a battery door. I'm not going to worry about this compartment. The door kind of snaps in place using the strength of the plastic to sort of hold it in place. There's no way I'm going to be able to carve that out of wood and have it hold. So I'm just going to carve the grooves all the way across, and I'm going to install a battery, just a rechargeable battery inside, probably something like a DS battery, and I'll just include somewhere on one of the halves a USB port for charging it up. So it'll have a rechargeable battery inside. I've already started on the rear shell. As you can see, there's a tiny notch right there, and it's almost big enough. So just a little bit further,